Hi, and welcome to Open, the show that opens the Bronx and the rest of the world to you. I'm Kibin Alleyne, and today we'll update you on what's happening in and around our borough. Coming up, the Clubhouse Café is a social enterprise coffee shop dedicated to providing real-world job training to young adults from the Bronx. We are joined by the executive director and co-founder, as well as a workforce development fellow of the South Bronx United, to learn more about how this cafe is operated. Then World Read Aloud Day is an initiative that encourages parents and their children to read aloud together and create a habit of lifelong reading and learning. The founder of World Read Aloud Day and the CEO of Dewey talks to us about the importance of reading to kids. After that, the Bridge Project seeks to solve child poverty in New York. The director of programs for the Bridge Project joins us in studio to share how they are fighting to help support mothers with childcare needs. And finally, there is a new children's book that is described as a love letter to the hustle, the bustle, the joy, and the grit of city life. We are joined by the author of My Block Looks Like to discuss the importance of representation in children's books. So stay tuned, all this and much more is headed your way because we're now officially open. Hello everyone, I'm Kibin Alleyne and today is Tuesday, February 6th. You are now watching Open, a program that brings the Bronx and New York City straight to you. Don't forget to stay connected with us via social media at BronxNet TV. The nonprofit organization South Bronx United has served the Bronx community since 2009. The organization recently launched a new program called Clubhouse Café. This program aims to provide job training to young adults ages 16 to 24. By opening the Clubhouse Café, the program offers young community members an opportunity to gain real-world job experience and skills to help them in their future careers. Executive Director and co-founder Andrew So, as well as Heidy Trujillo, a fellow of the Workforce Development at South Bronx United, joins me to discuss. Thank you both so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Now, I want to learn a little bit more about South Bronx United. So can you tell us a little bit more about that mission and the overall goal of the organization?
Yeah, sure. We're a nonprofit youth development organization that brings in young people through their passion for soccer. It combines soccer with academic enrichment, college prep, mentoring, immigration legal services, social work supports for youth and their families. And we work with about 1,600 young people every year, all the way from ages, really age 2 all the way up through 24.
That's amazing. And I was really, I was shocked to kind of hear about soccer and how it kind of branched out into doing so many other things, one of those being the Clubhouse Cafe. Can you just explain, what inspired the creation of this program?
Of the cafe?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, a few different things. I think it traces back on the programmatic side to the workforce development program, which was how do we support young people, helping them prepare for careers and prepare for the next steps after high school or after college. We have a lot of young people going on to college, but trying to figure out what's next, or figuring out college sometimes isn't for them, or they need a job or part-time job or something to support them through school. So that was one aspect of it. And then we have some young people that college isn't for them, and they're trying to figure out how to make that next jump in their life. So starting from the workforce development program, kind of figuring out how we can support young people towards that. And we wanted to be able to provide something in-house. So we already had what was called the coaching core, which provided young people opportunity to coach, learn to be coaches and mentors on the soccer field. But we wanted to have another aspect to it as well, because getting involved in coaching sports isn't for everyone. And we had the opportunity to, right where our offices are on River Ave by Yankee Stadium, the opportunity to have a little space, and decided it would be a great opportunity to open a cafe right there, and it provided opportunity to provide employment to young people.
That's amazing, and I want to learn a little bit more about the cafe, but I want to hear from you. What actually drew you to the program? Was it the fact that it was a cafe, or maybe you were looking for experience? Can you just explain, what sparked that interest in you?
I think it was both, experience-wise, and also I enjoy coffee, so that was kind of my in as well. So yeah, I think the job experience, and I'm also studying business right now. So I think getting, to train there, I get a lot of different types of, skills that I will need in the future. So yeah.
That's amazing. And can you expand on, the reasoning behind like actually creating a cafe? Because I think that's very unique in regard to like workforce development. That's the first time I've heard of, an organization saying like, let's kind of focus on something that's like super specific, like a
Yeah,
cafe.
sure.
And it's really interesting. So, can you talk about like maybe why your
sure.
organization wanted to go that route?
Yeah, and I spoke about the programmatic side to it, and the other side was the community aspect of it. So we had recently moved into our new office in our clubhouse about a year and a half ago, and there was this. We're on the second floor of the space there, and on the ground floor there was about a 600 square foot space. We'd been storing our stuff there while we waited for them to finish up the offices, and thought about what could we do with this space to support the programs. So the workforce development program is what it became, but also provide more visibility to organization and support the neighborhood and community in general. And I'd known that neighborhood, known it for many years. A lot of people I'm sure know it very well, right by Yankee Stadium. And surprisingly, there's been nothing in the neighborhood, no coffee shop. There's nowhere for folks to go, sit down, do work while getting a really good coffee. There's diners and bars but there's been nothing like a neighborhood coffee shop. So we thought it'd be a really good fit, and we'd heard from the neighbors and residents and people that work there that they were looking for something like that. So we thought it'd be a really good fit in that aspect, supporting the neighborhood as well as providing a spot for us to get young people like Heidy into in behind the bar and give them a chance to work.
Now, can you talk about the partnership with local coffee roaster? I hope I'm saying this. Devoción?
Yeah, Devoción. Yeah.
Okay, can you talk about that partnership?
Yeah. So another reason, and I have no background in coffee. I have no background in running I run a nonprofit, but a small business or cafe or restaurant of any kind.
Right?
Yeah, it's very different. But we had a board member that owns three cafes in the city and brought a lot of experience, and he brought in as well the connection with Devoción. And they do the coffee at his cafe. So we made the connection through there, got connected to the CEO, Stephen Sutton, and he was really excited about the prospect of supporting the Clubhouse Café. They're a B Corp, so they have it as part of their business model to support, have a mission-based support for the community. And they came in, they donated all the equipment for the cafe, so we didn't have to pay for that. They provide a great cost on the coffee beans themselves, and then they provide training for the young people in the Cafe Fellowship to train as baristas. So they go down to the roastery in Williamsburg, and then they do some training on our location as well.
That's amazing. And can you talk about what that experience was like in the training?
I think it was really fun, like getting to actually. I think there's a lot of things that go into making coffee. I think we just think about what type of milk we're gonna put and all that, but I learned a lot of things like the smell of it, like the way you taste it, the way you have to grind it, the size. So yeah.
That's amazing. And I feel like it's almost kind of like an art to like there's people that's like very passionate. Do you feel like maybe your passion has grown, after like going through this program?
I think definitely it has. Yeah. My interest in coffee definitely grew. Yeah.
That's amazing. Now, I want to talk about the long-term effects of, the Clubhouse Cafe. How will this prepare young people for careers in hospitality?
Sure. I think most immediately, despite the lack of coffee shops and cafes in the Bronx and the South Bronx in particular, you go throughout New York City, and in Manhattan, there seems like there's one every other block, whether it's the Starbucks or a local shop or whatever. So there's a lot of employment opportunities once you get the skills to work. So you can translate to working in other cafes. They're also all getting their food service certificate that can translate to working in all different establishments. So there's that side that it can directly translate to working in any number of businesses. But we want to make sure that the young people that are going through the fellowship are getting transferable skills well beyond just getting their next job in a restaurant. So they're doing workshops every week in the classroom. They're working on building their resume, working on interviewing skills. They're working on how to communicate with their supervisors and colleagues. A range of other job skills that they can apply to the hospitality industry, but also any other career that they look for afterwards.
Now, I also want to highlight another organization that was a part of the program, that's Hardy and Sons. How will their inclusion further support the mission of Clubhouse Café?
Yeah, Heidy talked a lot about coffee, but we have teas as well, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of tea drinkers out there, and they make a great chai. But they donated all the teas to launch the cafe and providing great support moving forward. So it's another establishment. If people are familiar with them, they have their own store down in downtown area, and they've been really supportive of the cafe and again helping us make sure that the most of what someone purchases in the store goes right back to the organization. So if you come in and get a tea, you come and get a coffee, these partnerships allow it so that most of your purchase will go back to support South Bronx United programs and the workforce development program instead of paying for the goods that we have to bring in.
That's amazing, and I really like that it's fully thought out in that sense, because it's kind of like circulating within the community, and that's always an amazing, just step in the right direction. So I love to hear that. Now, what are some of the qualities a participant should have, if they want to have a really fruitful and successful experience? And I would like to hear from both of you on that question.
Yeah. Do you want to go first? What qualities? Heidy has all the right qualities, so you can kind of share.
You said the qualities.
Yeah, like what are some of the qualities somebody who wants to join should have?
Oh, I think someone that's willing to learn, someone that's very on top of themselves, someone who has time management, someone that likes to communicate, or even if they don't, like is willing to try. Yeah.
Yeah, I think she nailed it. Coming in with a passion and willingness to
Yeah.
learn is the most important. But yeah, the organization is key, and that's what we work on young people with. But support, making it to all the workshops, all the sessions. Once you get put on a shift, that you know when to be there and you know how to communicate if you're sick or you're going to be late. So all those are things that I think as you get farther in their careers, we take for granted. But for a lot of young people, is skills that they're still working on.
Now, I'm excited to learn, what are the next steps for many of the participants after they complete the fellowship?
Yeah, well, Heidy could share what she's doing now, but we have students, we have folks that are full-time students and those that are looking to go into careers. So one of our goals is to help place them in a job if they want to continue. Some are staying in the cafe, some are going elsewhere. And think about how we can support them with whatever next step that is, whether it's a job, whether it's education, or whether that might be another training program or something if they want to go into a different type of career sector.
That's amazing. And do you have any advice for maybe, because you mentioned that a lot of them are students as well, so what advice would you give to some college students or possibly even high school students who may be interested in joining this program?
I think a lot of people should. Wait, sorry, can you repeat it?
Yeah, so what advice would you give to somebody who may be interested in joining the fellowship?
Yeah, I think the advice I would give is that you should go all in. You should like be on top of it. Like just try it out. You won't regret it. So yeah, that's the advice I would give. Yeah.
And if I could highlight, Heidy's been doing it as she's a full-time student.
Yeah.
Do you want to share about that?
I'm also a Lehman student here.
Amazing,
Yeah.
I love to hear that.
So I'm a sophomore here, and I'm currently studying business. So I think all those skills that I'm learning at the cafe would go into college and after.
That's amazing. Well, I'm really excited to hear about this. So this is the first time that I'm hearing, and it's something that's like really cool, like a cafe. I think most of these like work development, fellowships are usually like in an office or something a little bit more traditional. So I think it's exciting to see that we're kind of like branching out and doing things that I feel like a lot of young people would be interested in. So yeah, I just want to thank you both so much for joining us and kind of sharing, and you for sharing your story and sharing some advice with young people who may be interested in it. So thank you both so much.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you
you
so much for having us.
If you or someone you know may be interested in learning more about this amazing opportunity for Bronx youth, please go to their website at www.clubhousecafebx.com. Don't go away. We'll be back with more Open after this.
I remember when the Bronx did not really have a media outlet properly representing the people of the Bronx.
BronxNet provides for the community by being a community where people can be empowered to share their voices.
We are in a really great place technologically. We've got all the resources that we need to be effective.
Whether it's through cameras, storytelling, editing, we have provided those services for 30 years.
BronxNet's mission is to be a voice for the community.
To educate, to inform, and to inspire.
And you can be a part of it. We've built studios for you.
Welcome back. World Read Aloud Day celebrates the joy of reading and sharing stories that build connections within communities. The creator of World Read Aloud Day and the founder of several learning platforms and literacy campaigns, Pam Allyn, joins me to discuss how this day highlights the importance of reading and promotes global literacy. Pam, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Now, can you just tell us a little bit about how World Read Aloud came to be?
Well, it's a great story because the idea came from a child. I was reading aloud in a classroom in New York City, and the children were gathered around and they loved the read aloud so much. And afterwards, a child said to me, "Mrs. Allyn, I wish we could do that every single day." And so I said to him, "Well, we should do that every single day. Why aren't we doing that every day?" And he said, "Well, my teacher says there's a lot of tests that we need to take." So I said to him, "Do you know that the read aloud actually helps to advance students' skills? That children who are read aloud to every day perform up to a year, if not more, better in school than children who are not read aloud to." And he said to me, he was only 7, he said, "You know, we need more attention for this." He said, "When it's my birthday, people pay a lot of attention to me." He said, "We should have a big party for the read aloud, and then nobody will forget how important it is." And I thought, what a great idea. So I went home, I told my team, I said, "A child today just had the world's best idea. Let's see if we can make a big party." So that day was the first day. We said, let's make a date. We picked a date. And from then on, it's been the first Wednesday of every February. Teachers asked us, make a date when nobody in the world is on vacation from school. So February it is. So that's how it is. And I've always thought to myself, I hope somewhere, someplace, that little guy 14 years ago was the one who had that idea, is listening. He's fully grown now. I hope he knows what an impact he had.
That's amazing, and I love to hear that story. It shows that kids want to read and they kind of have that passion for reading. Can you also explain, why reading aloud with young children is so important? And you mentioned that they get skills. What are some of those skills?
Reading aloud to a child is actually a lot more important than people realize because they see it as being something so relaxing. It's obviously fun. Children love to hear the same books over and over again, so that kind of drives us crazy sometimes, but still amazing. But actually, in fact, it's a very educational thing to do for a child. One reason is because you're really marinating a child in vocabulary, in sentences, in the beauty of language. You're giving them opportunity to be immersed in literature they might not yet be able to read on their own. And then the second thing that's really important for young children, but really for everybody, but especially for young children, is for them to see us reading. Because oftentimes you can't see when someone's reading. We're looking at our phones, or it looks like we're turning pages, but the child doesn't know what we're doing. So the read aloud is a manifestation of literacy. It's showing a child what we're doing. And then finally, something about the read aloud is there's a book, there's you, there's me, and there's something that happens between us that is magic. And for a child to feel that, okay, reading can feel great to me, and it's something I might want to do for the rest of my life, that's a huge message we can pass to children.
I also want to add that I think reading aloud is also important for any age. I even from myself, I noticed that once I started getting into this work, I was like, I definitely need, it just helps you with speaking,
yes.
And everything, so I think it's so important, and it is important that we start much younger. I wish that this was something that was around when I was a child, because I think I definitely would have been.
You would have loved it.
I would have loved it. So it's so nice to hear that. Now, as an educator and a literacy advocate, what are some of the challenges you observed in children who might struggle with reading?
There are a lot of challenges, and yet I am a very driven person when it comes to literacy. I believe we can do a lot better, and in terms of the outcomes that we have. But I do think that the challenge is what gets in the way. One is distraction, that children are moving in a lot of directions. Schools are very busy. There's a lot going on, child after school, and then in the evening. There's so much happening, and I think for us adults to prioritize reading and say, we know it's busy, but we're always going to do this at every point of the day. Distraction is a hard one, and especially with all the technology. So for us too, to settle ourselves a little bit as parents, cousins, friends of children, teachers, to take every day to say, am I sitting down beside a child to show that? And then the second challenge is really, we've had some years that have gone where we haven't really fully done all that we need to do in schools for literacy. And I'm really thrilled that the chancellor's, I think, doing a great job. He has a big campaign for reading in New York City. New York City always leads the way in the nation. I think the appreciation of how a child learns phonetically, phonemically, and also by building comprehension. These are all things that children need to do that oftentimes we kind of miss certain pieces of those things. So I think we're getting on track, and I think we're moving in the right direction. The challenges are real, but my goal is 100% literacy.
Now, there's been a lot of discussion on the science of reading in school districts within New York State. Can you tell me a little bit more about what that is?
Yes, so the science of reading is really, researchers have really investigated the cognitive aspects of reading. Reading is so mysterious and miraculous. You kind of, as an adult, you don't remember, how did I learn to read? But there is a science to it. And so one of the aspects of the science of reading is the phonemic, phonics aspect of it, which is the connections that sounds and letters make. But there's a lot of other aspects to the science of reading, including how we make meaning when we bring text into our minds, and how smoothly we read on the page. That's called fluency. And so there's different parts of the scientific aspect of reading that have been, in some ways, teachers just do need more support. They need more training, they need more support, and so do parents. And that's part of my work with Dewey, is that I want to create that homeschool connection so that parents and teachers alike can know what the science of reading is, and know that they too can embrace it and use those principles at home, not only at school, but at home with their children.
Now, what is the SOR model, and how does Reading Aloud support that?
So SOR is a shorthand for science of reading, but no, please, most people don't know. And it's actually, what's great about it is it's giving us a structure for how we can look at what it means to become a reader. So for example, we do have to practice our phonics. We have to practice the sounds letters make in correspondence with the letters that we see on the page or screen. However, for example, the English language is a confounding language because it's not even a phonetic language. So we have to do more than that too. We have to teach children how to look at character development. We have to teach them how to learn to be critical readers and read something and then ask a question about it. So SOR is really saying, make sure we give children all of those things, not just some or others, but all. And that the English language, as children learn it in school, helps them to understand too that sometimes I'm stretching sounds, and sometimes I have to memorize that particular little word, like THE isn't really easy to just stretch the sounds on, but memorizing it will help, but stretching sounds helps. And then third, just learning to love text and being the kind of super reader who can say, even if something is hard, I'm going to use all these strategies of SOR to help myself get through them.
Now, I'm really curious to know, we talked about some of the challenges, and one of those challenges was technology. So are there any resources available for parents and teachers who want to help their children or their child build a solid reading habit and foundation, especially in the age of technology?
Yes. So, I mean, one thing is use the technology for a good purpose. So, for example, as simple as a FaceTime with a grandparent, do a read aloud that way. That's a good use of technology. Secondly is use the New York City Public Library. We have, I think it's the best library system in the world. I'm so proud to be a New York City resident so that I get to go to the library. It's a very welcoming place. I highly encourage parents, caregivers, and educators to make more use of it. Go take books out, talk to the librarians about what their favorite new books are. And then finally, come visit my website, deweycommunity.com, because we really have focused a lot of our energy on helping parents in short bursts to really understand how they can help their children at home as readers, making space for their children, create a cozy corner for reading to happen at home. You don't have to have a lot of room, and you don't even have to have a lot of books.
Now, as we mentioned, World Read Aloud Day is tomorrow, so how are you celebrating World Read Aloud Day?
Well, first of all, I'm going to be doing some read alouds with children across the country. Luckily, and that's the benefit of technology, I get to be invited into classrooms virtually, so I'm going to get to do a lot of that tomorrow. And then also, I'm hoping to visit a few classrooms here in New York City DOE, and that'll be really fun. This is where it all started. That little boy was from a New York City public school. He was the inventor, so we always have to touch back in. And then finally, I'm a grandmother, so I have a 2-year-old grandson, Gus, and he and I are definitely going to be reading aloud tomorrow with my mom, my husband, his parents, my other daughter, the whole extended family. We'll do that some of us by Zoom and some of us in person, and we'll use it as a way for our family to be together.
That's amazing. I love to hear that, but you know, it's a day, but we want this to be every day, right? So what can parents do to ensure that they're kind of getting that reading aloud as part of their daily habits and, you know, part of the family routine?
I love that question, because that was always my intention and always my dream after that little guy gave me that idea was World Read Aloud Day should be every day. And I think the main thing I can say to people is you don't have to have anything really except your own stories. If you're worried that you don't know which book to choose or what to do, tell a story from your own childhood. Make that your read aloud for the day, each and every day. And then secondly, the things that we can do each day are to create rituals and routines around the read aloud that aren't just about a bedtime story, because sometimes when we're working parents or grandparents, we're tired by the end of the day. So make the read aloud routine before breakfast or while you're preparing a dinner. Have your child read aloud to you at the dinner table. And also don't be afraid to be excited when your child wants to revisit books they've already read. That's something parents often ask me. They say, is that okay? And I say, yes, they can read that book again and again. That's still going to be very good for their brain development.
Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us and having this conversation. It really brought back a lot of nice memories for me, because I grew up in the library and reading was a huge part of what my family did. And I'm so glad to see that World Read Aloud Day has grown, you know, just from one child. So thank you so much for joining us and sharing that story.
Thanks for having me.
To stay in touch with all the work that Pam does, please go to her website at www.pamallyn.com. Stay tuned. We have more open for you right after this.
Happy anniversary to BronxNet, 30 years. Wow, brings back so many memories. This exact studio that I'm in right now, I broadcast out of here. This must have been around 2003. I mean, time flies by so quickly. I started out here, it was either Mr. Gary Axelbank and Mr. Batch with Lady Morsar. We used to do a show here called In the Neighborhood. And I brought so many different guests on this show. To be able to bring your voice to the community is very powerful. To bring hip hop and spirituality, I brought my pastor in this same studio, Pastor Gino Jennings, and I'm sure you guys know who Pastor Gino Jennings is. That's rough. And some disciplined teaching. BronxNet is something that we need to uplift our communities, because this is a platform that we can come, and if you have a vision that's in your mind going into your heart, you can use it to do uplifting things for your community.
Welcome back. The Bridge Project aims to alleviate poverty among mothers, and it is the first unconditional cash allowance program in New York. The organization operates in New York City and serves 600 infants and their mothers spanning over 20 zip codes. The program also works in collaboration with over 25 community-based partners and service organizations to assist these families. Director of Programs Jessica Ramos Cuttone joined me to discuss this effort. Jessica, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Now, could you tell me a little bit more about the Bridge Project and how it began?
Sure. So the Bridge Project is fairly new. We started in 2021, right in the middle of the pandemic, and that was for a reason. You know, the pandemic was something that really let our founders know that in times of crisis, people do believe in cash transfers, right? So there were all of these stimulus packages that went out to families who were experiencing poverty. There was, you know, the child tax credit was enhanced. There was also all of these other programs like a moratorium on eviction. So we knew that, you know, it was possible to respond to poverty, right, as if it was a crisis. I think what we realized and what we want to show the world, though, is that people are in crisis all of the time due to poverty, right? It wasn't just the pandemic, that families are experiencing this as an emergency throughout their lifetime, and that there is something we can do about it and we should continue to. So that's how we started our cash transfer program in 2021. At that point, it was still considered a pilot, and we have officially announced that we are a program, a full program this year, and actually up to 1,100 families are receiving our support, and I would say in the next few months that number is going to just rise, maybe even by at least 600 more families.
Wow, now I think it's so interesting that your organization kind of grew out of the pandemic, because I know for many organizations, the pandemic was maybe an obstacle or a hurdle. So can you talk about, you know, in the pandemic, you know, did it impact any of the work that you did? Did it make things a little bit more challenging, or did it make it easier since you know who the target audience was and who you needed to be helping?
Right. I mean, it's not difficult because when you talk about directly giving cash to families, there isn't a lot of in-person necessities there, right? Like we figure out how to get the money straight to the people and we do it. And that involves a lot of technology anyway. And so that was not an obstacle as far as other nonprofits who are doing direct service work. They had to switch everything to be online, and we were always going to use technology to provide this program. If anything, like I said, what we understood was that there was support for this program, for these types of interventions, that people actually understand that to alleviate poverty, cash is necessary.
Now, I really want to talk about that because I know that it shouldn't be controversial, but a lot of people have thoughts about, you know, when assisting others, how giving cash can either help or hurt, you know, the families in need. Can you talk about a little bit, you know, how did your organization face that, and why your organization found that cash was the best option to help these families?
Right, and like you said, I mean, it shouldn't be this controversial. We actually find that people say that we're very radical for giving cash and trusting parents to take care of their children, where what we say is that parents are the best possible people to know what their families need. And so we trust them 100%. So when we give our cash, it's without strings attached. We do not tell people how to spend their money. We don't tell people that there are limits on what they can spend for certain things. And the whole reason for that is again, the trust, right? We need to build a culture where we understand that coming out of poverty is not something we can put into a neat formula, that families are very unique and their needs are very unique, and only they can decide what it is they need.
Now, in what ways could cash actually be more helpful than maybe some other forms of assisting a family?
Sure, and I'll give you an example. You know, I can be a family that perhaps I have some flexibility when it comes to my rent, right? Maybe I know my landlord, maybe they're easy to negotiate with, but I absolutely have to have a car because my job is so far away that I need a car, or I need the car to do my job. That's the kind of math that I would do to assess where my money went, right? So maybe I can negotiate with my landlord, but I can't do that for my car payment. And so that's where my money's gonna go. And another family might have the extreme opposite need, right? The rent is non-negotiable. They can actually do without a car, and maybe someone else is helping them with food. So you see what I'm saying is, only families know what they need, and only families can make those really crucial decisions.
Now, the organization highlights that they would prefer to minimize interference and maximize impact. Why was this your approach your organization wanted to take?
Sure, and I think, for the movement of just the basic income movement, that is the philosophy, right? And again, it goes back to trust. It goes back to understanding that there is no formula for getting a family, moving a family out of poverty, that family really knows what they need to do. And so we wanted to put it out there that we're starting this culture of trust, and, other people should follow suit, because it works, and the studies have shown that when you look at what people are actually spending the money on, we do have like voluntary surveys that we provide. The money is mostly going to things like food, goods for the baby, right? And then also things like childcare. You might be able to now get longer hours for your childcare, and so that you can work overtime. All of these things are, again, within the family unit to decide, and so that's why we're hands-off.
Now, I want to talk about poverty and how it affects women with children specifically. Can you, highlight that? Because I think over the past 2 years, we have talked about poverty and how it's affecting, just anyone in our city. But how is it affecting, women, maybe single moms, anybody who has a child?
Yeah, I mean, we live in New York City, and everybody knows how expensive everything is. When you add the cost of diapers and formula and anything that's created for a baby, I mean, just the car seat, right, costs up to like hundreds of dollars to get the correct one. I think it's an added burden that we don't, and we're a country who isn't right now prioritizing supporting parents, right, through that journey. And so the reason that we chose to support birthing and parenting persons is that even in the prenatal stage where you're just getting ready for the baby, there is all this stuff to purchase. And the stress of not knowing if your baby's going to have a crib to sleep in or a car seat to even leave the hospital with, we just wanted to alleviate that and focus on that parent really providing what the child needed.
Now, what is a typical experience for somebody who is joining this program? And, what is it like to sign up? What do they have to go through to kind of receive these benefits?
Yeah, I would say it's quite simple. If you meet the eligibility, you fill out an application online. And as we have a rolling application, so as we pull applications, we will notify those who get in. It is a lottery system, simply because we don't have enough funding for everyone, and a lot of people need this program. So if you do make it in the lottery, you're notified, you're onboarded, right? And then honestly, you get a card and you start getting your funds biweekly from there for the next 3 years for your baby. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. And I'm so glad that we're highlighting this program, because I think that as well as many other people, had this idea about like cash programs, and it's always been so like demonized and in certain ways, and kind of hearing is like, yeah, driving your child to school is helpful, and you are going to need money for gas for that, but there are so many restrictions in other programs. Now, that kind of leads me to my next question is, can you just talk a little bit more about the need for a cash transfer program like the Mothers and Infants Lasting Change Allowance in New York State?
Oh yeah, so it's called the Milk Bill, and we're very excited about it. We are trying our best to use private, money to get this funded, but it's not enough. In Buffalo alone, we had funding for 50 participants, and we had 300 applications in 2 weeks. That's 300 people who qualified for our program, right? And it's also, we're capturing a very small audience. You would think you have to be in your first or second trimester of pregnancy, right? Live below the poverty line, and we had 300 applications. And so this bill would expand access to a program like this. It would actually provide the funding for 15,000 participants across the state. So we've partnered with Senator Jessica Ramos, my name twin, and we've gotten a lot of support, and we're hoping that it passes. We need government support to create this program nationally, and I mean statewide, and then our goal is nationally. We have big dreams. So yeah, that's what it's for. So look up the bill and show your support if you can.
Now, how does this improve emotional and mental well-being?
Yeah, so many studies show already that the stress from living in poverty is toxic, right? It's toxic for your brain, it's toxic for child's development. And we actually, our project has a research component because we are trying to prove that there is really a direct correlation between poverty and the development of a child. That's why we're really reaching children their first 3 years. That's the point where like there's the most brain development happening. And if toxic stress is present, then it's hindered, right? And obviously if your development is hindered, the long-term outcomes are, you know, struggles in school, struggles with, you know, work later on in life. It's all connected, and we know that the return on investment for a program like this is greater the first 3 years of a person's life, is why we're focused on babies.
Now, I wanted to expand on that because I think when we talk about poverty, we tend to think about the adult that's involved and you know, how they react to the child or like how they need to support the child. But in regard to the actual child, what are the long-term benefits of, you know, being a part of a program like this?
Yeah, so what we want to show is that with healthy brain development, with those crucial years being supported by, you know, a parent not having the toxic stress that comes with living in poverty, that we're going to see better outcomes with health, first of all, for the child, right? So increased birth weight. We want to see like improved outcomes in school. We hope to see longer term effects where, you know, the child is then successful in life. And we hope to continue our research in that vein so that we can make these really direct correlations.
Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us and sharing a little bit more about this amazing program.
Thank you.
If you or someone you know could use some support with childcare and would like to learn more about the Bridge Project, please go to their website at www.bridgeproject.org. We have to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Open after this.
The ability to have my show during this time is helpful because I can stay connected with my friends, still interview people, and share my content.
Hey everyone, it's your girl Kat from the Kitty Rose Lifestyle, also from The Next Chapter, where we discuss shades of gray every week right here at BronxNet, Saturdays at 11 p.m. Wow, 30 years. 30 years of BronxNet public access television. I'm a girl from Brooklyn and came to the Bronx 25 years ago, started my journey on BronxNet on public access television in 2016, and BronxNet is where I got my start. BronxNet, I feel like, is a home away from home. They support all of my endeavors, and I wouldn't have been able to be on any of the other channels if it wasn't for the fundamentals that I learned right here at my start here at BronxNet. So I am so appreciative. My son says I should stop telling people I'm from Brooklyn because I've been here now, Bronx Strong, for 22 years. So I'm so grateful, and I wish you much success in 30 years, 30, 30, 30, 30, 30, 30, 30, 30 more, because public access is necessary so that people like myself can have a voice. Yes, BronxNet, it's your girl Kat from Kitty Rose. Check me out every Saturday at 11 p.m. right here, Channel 68, The Next Chapter, where we discuss shades of gray. Mwah.
Welcome back. Carrying her New York accent around with pride, children's book author and Bronx native Janelle Harper remains passionate about representation. Her latest book, My Block Looks Like, champions diversity and inclusion, showcasing and amplifying the different voices that make up a community. The author now joins me to discuss the book and the importance of representation in stories made for children. Janelle, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, I'm excited to learn. This book sounds amazing, and it sounds like a book that I wish I had when when I was younger. Before we get into talking about the book, I'm curious to know what led you on a path towards creating a children's book.
So I've always been a storyteller. I started dancing at the age of 4, so that's 35 years. I'm not afraid to tell my age. And so dance is essentially storytelling through the body and movement. But as a child growing up in school, my favorite subject was definitely English and writing and reading. And so when the pandemic happened in 2020, like everyone else trying to figure out, what's next and really reflecting on what I really value, I reignited my passion for writing, and then I was able to connect it back to storytelling and my passion for children.
Now, what inspired the creation of My Block Looks Like?
So the inspiration behind My Block Looks Like is twofold. So I was a teacher for about 17 years in public schools, and I taught dance. And so it was always important for me to make sure my curriculum represented the children I saw in my classroom. And so one of the styles of dance I always taught was hip hop. Being that the children were from the Bronx, I was teaching in the Bronx. And something that always astounded me was when we talked about the history and social context behind the dance, the students rarely ever knew that it began in their borough. And I was like, wow, they don't know how many amazing things and places exist within their borough. And I just thought about my experience being a child of the Bronx and how many great memories I had, but then thinking about how often people who weren't a part of the community would have misconceptions or negative perceptions about our borough. And so for me, My Block Looks Like was a love letter to all the amazing people, places, and things within our community, and also was a way to take back our narrative about who we are and who we know we are.
Now, if anybody knows the Bronx, people from the Bronx are so colorful, and there's just, there's just so much personality in the Bronx. And as a Bronx native, how did you make sure that you kind of captured that essence and put it inside the book?
Oh, I thought about all my favorite things. So the Icy Man is in there. I thought about all my memories after school running to the Icy Man, the open hydrants in the summer, the pickup games, the subway and the subway performers. And of course, because we're the birthplace of hip hop, there's, paying homage to hip hop throughout the book as well.
Now, hearing this, I think it's amazing because I think about some of the stories that I read, and usually maybe it would be taking place in a suburb, or if it wasn't a city, it was in a certain part of the city that I wasn't from. How do you think that this could possibly help, a child develop a little bit of self-confidence and, where they come from?
Yeah, so representation in books truly matter because it allows children to feel seen, to feel valued, to be seen and to be heard. And it also opens their possibilities of what's possible and allows them to dream bigger. I don't know what's possible for my life and myself if I don't have examples of it. And so representation in books are really important.
Now, you're known for being passionate about representation. I'm curious to know what sparked that passion, or when did you realize this was something that you kind of wanted to work a little bit further into?
I think just growing up as a little, black child, dark-skinned child, and just realizing that I had hard times finding representation of myself in media and in books, and just being a teacher in the classroom and knowing I wanted something more for my students. I also consider them my children, so sometimes I go back and forth to say my children. But I know how important it is to see someone who looks like you, and so I just wanted to write books that helped children to feel seen and to feel heard and to feel valued and loved.
Now, I want to talk a little bit about some of the events that you have coming up. Can you talk about the Golden Runway event?
Yes, so that event is a part of New York Fashion Week, and it's a charity event. And Golden Runway, they do it annually, and this year they're championing the cause of children's heart disease, so that's what they're focusing on. But they have children models, they have children performers, and I'll also be there representing and doing a story time.
Oh, that's amazing. Can you talk a little bit? We talked about reading today and how it's so important. How did it happen that you were going to pair reading in a place like with fashion? Can you talk about the importance of even kind of putting those two things together?
Yes, so the founder, Frances, she actually follows me on Instagram and she learns about the book and she was just like, this has to happen at this event. This book, you know, represents the children that are participating. The parents need to know about it. You are representing New York City, and so it was just a collaboration in that regard.
Now, we've been doing so much in regard to improving representation in books, in different forms of media. You know, what do you think we can do to keep that momentum going and to ensure that like we're continuing to represent more children, especially those from marginalized communities?
Yeah, for sure. Some tangible ways is supporting diverse authors and illustrators, and you know, not during just like Black History Month, but throughout the year, so that publishing houses know that there is a need and desire for these books. Going to your local library, checking out the books, or going to your bookstore. As parents and community members, going to the school board meetings, going to community boards, and really, investigating what kind of curriculum our children are learning and are they reflected in the curriculum. And another thing I always encourage people is to go out and vote for representatives that we believe are going to advocate for what's best for our children.
Now, how has your background in education influenced the way you tell stories made for children?
I feel like I approach storytelling and creating books the same way I did in the classroom, which is just recognizing that children are whole human beings. And I know that seems like duh, of course, but as adults, I think sometimes we forget they're not just like a blank canvas that we superimpose our thoughts onto, and that they're not like mini clones of like the adults in their lives. Like they bring their own life experiences, they bring their own perspective, their own desires. And it's important for us to value that, and especially with this movement of book banning under the disguise of we're trying to protect the children, I think we're not giving our kids enough credit as critical thinkers, that they're able to draw their own conclusions, they're able to analyze the world.
I want to agree with that. I think that a lot of people think kids are like they don't understand things, and they do understand.
Yes.
And so many studies have shown that when there isn't representation or they don't see themselves, they may not verbally say it, but they are affected by that, and they do notice that. So I agree 100%. Now, how do you highlight or explore non-traditional storytelling structures in your work?
Yes, so my block looks like it's actually written in verse. And so just being a young girl growing up in the Bronx and growing up with hip hop in the 80s and 90s, like it appeals to me so much, like that poetic, lyrical language. And so I bring that a lot into my writing style as well.
That's amazing. And why did you want to go maybe a non-traditional route? What kind of made you say like, hey, I want to try something new? And what gave you the courage to actually try something new?
Yeah, so it just felt like what was authentic to me growing up in the Bronx, and also just being of the African diaspora. Our storytelling is very different than, other Western forms. But representation is what gave me the courage. So thinking of people like Kwame Alexander and Elizabeth Acevedo and Jason Reynolds, or people who play with, non-traditional storytelling and also write in verse, seeing that representation even as an adult gave me the courage and the confidence to write.
Now, how has your relationship with books and reading evolved from someone who grew up just reading books to now somebody who creates books?
I think it's evolved and also helped me just to always remember that child within me, like what kind of books I wanted to see that I unfortunately didn't see. And so just keeping that in mind as I write stories.
Now, can you talk about how books like My Block looks like it's part of a larger mission to provide equitable education and resources for Black and brown children?
Yes, so when we talk about like equity within the classroom and schools, like what we're really talking about is making sure we are providing and fostering like the best, environment, tools, skills for the children to do their best learning and have their best learning outcomes. And a part of that is making sure that the curriculum is diverse and represents the experiences and the culture that we see in the classroom. So books like my block looks like and the other diverse books help children to be seen and help them to be invested in their learning.
Well, first I want to say congratulations on creating a book and kind of like getting it out there, because I know that cannot be an easy process. But what are your next steps as an author? Do you plan to possibly make another children's book? Do you want to highlight another demographic? What are your next steps, and what are some future plans?
So I'm definitely going to continue writing. Publishing is so secretive, so there's things I can't, exactly announce. But I'm definitely going to continue writing. I'm definitely going to continue telling stories for children who look like the kids in my school and my community and my family. And I'm definitely also going to continue working with different nonprofits like the Bronx is Reading, Locked and Lit, and Bronx Bound Books to do author visits, and so that children have those experiences as well.
I think this is also amazing that you said author visits, because it's one thing to create the book, but to let a child know that like they can actually like meet the author and speak to the person who wrote the book. Maybe why was it important for you to kind of be visible to the kids as well?
Like you said, it just makes it more tangible when they see you in front of them, and then they get to ask you questions, and it's so fun. They're like, "Are you famous?" I'm like, "I'm from the same neighborhood as you," and they're like, "Oh, okay." And then you get to tell them, if you're a storyteller or if you like drawing and illustrating, you can do this, in the future. And it's like you see the light bulb go off and the wheels start turning. So yeah.
I think that's amazing. I love to hear that, because I think a lot of people as children think, we see these books and you do think that, oh my, these are famous people and they're rich and they're not from the same neighborhood that I'm from. And it's like, no, they are from the same neighborhood, and you can achieve this, accomplishment as well. So, I think this is an amazing thing. I'm so glad this book was created, and I hope that we have more books like this in the future. Where can you just let people know, where can they go to like learn a little bit more about you and more about the events that are coming up?
Absolutely. So on social media, I am at BX Storyteller, and my author website is JanelleHarperAuthor.com.
All right. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
To find out more about the new children's book, What My Blog Looks Like, please go to her website at www.JanelleHarperAuthor.com, or to keep up with Janelle, please follow her on social media at BX Storyteller. We've come to the end of our show today. I'd like to thank all of our guests for joining us and you, the viewers, for tuning in. If you missed any part of today's show, you can catch the rebroadcast at 5 and 10 p.m. on Optimum Channel 67 and Verizon Fios Channel 33, or watch anytime on the web at bronxnet.org. You can catch a brand new episode of Open with Darren Heidy on Wednesday and with Rena Valentine on Friday. I'm Kibin Alleyne, wishing you and yours safety and wellness now and always. See you next time.